Hey everyone, Cody Shirk here, coming to you from a beautiful beach again. I'm talking to you today about uranium. I spoke about it a couple weeks ago. I told you how I sold out of the position, but I see some new opportunities popping up and I may get back into the market. And that's because there have been some recent geopolitical events happening that may turn the entire uranium market upside down. I haven't heard anybody go over this. I'm going to explain it all to you and why it's super impactful for investors who are currently in the market, but also for investors who may be looking to get into the market. So this story involves Russia, France, the US, and Niger. I'm going to explain it all right now. First, let's go over France. France has 56 nuclear reactors throughout the country. 70% of electricity in France is generated from a nuclear power plant. As we all know, uranium goes to fuel a nuclear power plant, and the uranium that France imports, 20% of that comes from Niger. So Niger is a very geopolitically important country for France. The US and France are obviously friends as it comes to Western allies. So it's important to understand that the US backs France typically when it comes to geopolitical scenarios. Niger is located in the Sahel region of Africa. The Sahel region includes Niger, Mali, Algeria, Burkina Faso, and a couple other countries. This region of Africa is super resource rich, and it has been an area of conflict for really centuries. And that's because there's always been outside countries coming into this region and trying to exploit the resources of Africa. Gold, silver, rare earth metals, uranium, copper, all kinds of stuff that can be pulled out of the earth exists in the Sahel region. So there's always the colonial powers going into this area to extract these very valuable resources. The last country is Russia. And Russia is very important to understand what they're doing right now. They're obviously in a war right now with Ukraine, but they're also in many other countries around the world securing new alliances, creating new friendships, and creating new paths of trade to enable the Russian economy to exist post their sanctions being implemented on them by the West. Okay, so that's the basic background. In 2013, France sent special military forces into Niger under the guise of an operation called Operation Serval. This operation was intended to combat radical Islamic militants. What they were really doing is they were going down there to ensure that they had access to their uranium. In 2014, Operation Serval ended and Operation Barkhane started. Operation Barkhane was accompanied by the US and other nations. Remember, 2014, Russia invaded Crimea. So just think in the back of your mind, there's some serious geopolitical chess going on here. The West is trying to secure their power in the Sahel region of Africa. And Russia is starting to look in the Sahel region to strengthen relationships there because Russia knows that they're going to need access to copper, uranium, gold, silver, etc. Now, in a previous video, I already explained to you how Russia helped the government of Mali get a coup going in 2021 and overthrow their government. And now Russia is very friendly with the Mali government. Mali, as of recently, the past couple of months, has revoked the mining licenses of multiple different publicly traded gold miners. I already explained to you that if you are looking at publicly traded gold miners who are operating in Mali, you should probably sell or get out of there before it's too late. Well, guess what? Now, in Niger, Russia helped the Niger government, the new government, throw over the old government in 2023 in a coup. This was done by the Wagner Group, which is the Wagner Group, which is a bunch of Russian mercenaries that go around the world and fight the battles that Russia doesn't want to publicly state they are fighting. So why is this important for uranium investors? Well, first of all, France operates a mine in there, one of their largest mines, and it's operated by Urano. Urano is state-owned and operated, so you can't invest in it, but it's a major uranium producer. And they just got kicked out of Niger. Niger just informed them a couple weeks ago that, hey, you're no longer operating the mine, get out of here. What's really going on behind the scenes is that the Russians are probably gonna bring in their operations to exploit the uranium out of that mine. And France is basically giving up the white flag. I can make a joke about that, but I'll pass on that for right now. Because the joke is also on the US. As you probably heard a couple months ago, the US is backing out of Niger as well. They're giving up a $100 million drone base, which the Russians are taking over as well. So this is clearly a larger story of Russia taking over power in Africa, aligning themselves with multiple different governments across Africa and securing new resources and new relationships so the Russian economy can flourish by exporting these African resources and bypassing the sanctions that have been put on Russia. So for investors, there are several companies that are still operating in Niger, several publicly traded uranium companies. I would not invest in those for obvious reasons, because it's highly likely that, well, the French just got their mine taken away from them. It's highly likely that these other publicly traded companies that are trading on US and Canadian markets are going to get their mines taken away from them as well. The flip side of the story is that there are many, many publicly traded uranium companies that operate exclusively in Canada, Australia, or the US, which are much lower risk when it comes to the risk of getting your mine taken away from you. So if you're an investor and you want to get exposure to uranium, you should be looking at the companies that are operating in these Western aligned countries that don't have the geopolitical risk of having mines taken away. I've created an entire list of them in the article that I've published with the link down below. The list is far too long for me to list here. But the bigger picture here, the bigger point is you need to be aware of what's going on in Africa right now. There is a proxy war happening as we speak. And I don't even know if I'd call it a proxy war, because there are Russian mercenaries on the ground there. There are US troops on the ground there. And while there's no direct, kinetic warfare between them, all powers are trying to influence different African nations to swing one way or the other. The Russians have been pretty successful with 3 recent coups across the Sahel region, and those coups include Mali and Niger, and those governments are now aligned with Russia, and in fact Mali and Niger just cut off diplomatic ties with Ukraine. At the same time as all of this, Ukraine is currently sending down diplomats to Africa in order to establish relationships with other countries that haven't picked a side yet. But again, the bigger story here is that this trend is not slowing down. It's only accelerating. Countries across Africa are picking sides. Either they're going Russia or China, or they're sticking with the US or France or other Western powers that have typically been the colonizers of Africa. And how this ends, well, anybody can take a bet. But if you're an investor, you've got to know there's huge risk here. There's huge risk to losing your money completely, because we're not talking about companies missing quotas or missing accounting dates. We're talking about companies losing the rights to mine. And if you lose that, then you have nothing left. So the uranium investments that I sold out of quite a while ago were some ETFs from some larger uranium miners. And the reason why I sold out of them, one, is they went up a lot in value, but two, they have so many holdings within their company. I didn't feel comfortable with all those holdings. I liked some of them, but I didn't like all of them. So there's a lot of junior miners, junior uranium miners, who are operating in the US, Canada, Australia, that are pure plays, don't have the geopolitical risk of operating in these countries that could be at risk. And those could see some huge premiums in the future, because if the US, Canada, or other Western nations, or France need uranium, and they can only get uranium from Western aligned countries, they're going to have to get the uranium from mines that are not controlled and operated by Russia. Huge unfolding story here, and there's multiple resource games going on in Africa that no one is really talking about, and that's because it's confusing and it's pretty uncomfortable to talk about as well. But it is happening, and if you're an investor involved in this stuff, it's a huge risk. All right, guys, I've got some crazy stuff coming up next week. You're not going to believe where I'm going and what I'm getting into, but I will be sharing it with you when I can. Until then, get out there, explore, and enjoy the world. See you guys.